Ani Bilawarali and the Larrakia Nation, thank you for allowing us to come together and to speak on Larrakia country. Kai Yanan, Wanakalawa. To all our guests tuning in from across Australia, here we are at the launch of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages here at Bulimar at the Darwin Convention Centre on Larrakia country. I'm Darren McKenney, founder of Bulimar. Bulimar as a gathering came about through adversity. It is through this which we have faced and has made us stronger through our voice and our efforts. Bulimar, an Awabakal word from Newcastle on the east coast of New South Wales, which translates to make voice, to speak. Way back in 2007, I had this crazy idea of creating this event to bring Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people together to talk about our languages, share what we are doing, and hopefully by then starting to make a difference. 80 people gathered that time in Newcastle. Now today, look around and we have way more than just 80 people here. In fact, this is probably the largest Indigenous language gathering ever held globally. Thank you to many of you who have been Thank you to many of you who have been a part of this gathering since the beginning, and to the many since. It is and always will be your contribution and presence which has made this event the success that it is. Language is the holder, the gateway to our knowledges. It is our culture, it is our beliefs, and it is through our voice where we be who we are as carers for country and allow country to care for us as we care for one another. I hope that this will be echoed today by those voices we will hear on stage, telling their story in the need to keep our languages alive. It is my pleasure to welcome our host for this morning's event. You may know our man of many talents, Sean Chulbra, comedian and dancer, and Litha Asan, a cultural and community leader from the Torres Strait Islands, passionate about the conservation of languages. Please welcome our Masters of Ceremony to the stage. And thank you both. And thank you both for agreeing to be our hosts this amazing gathering. I will now hand the show over to you.
Thank you, Darren. It's an honour to be here on Gurrumilla country here, and for the Australian launch of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. You introduce yourself first, okay?
Hard act to follow. Kapmiki Batainga, Debe Dim, Muzungalita San. Ngai Malulil Gal Badun Ngapa, Zenat Kes. Ngai Kaima Popudi, Nguzukulkau Dagam, Saibai, Parema, Migidaudai, Erub, Mer, Awutiti, Kaidaudai, ngai bai nai gai gubalaig. Ngai la keima apapudi a good widika kauberdrau mabaigal larakia o mabaigal. Nitumun kai a kuiku mabaigal kai papakulai kaib senapangapapangal. It's a pleasure to be here today to celebrate the beauty and diversity of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait languages.
It's an honor also, sorry about that. Apologize, I gave you a fright. Apologize. Not a bigger fright than Darren McKinney. I don't know if he headbutted that microphone or what, yeah? Certainly that's what the Matildas needed the other night. Darren McKinney's forward. So it's an honor also to share the stage with you, Lita. Yeah.
You too, Sean.
My people are Girmay people, which is just north of Townsville. And my other people is Gugi, Yalanji, Kalkaroon, Piripira, and I don't even know why I'm reading that. Yeah, you know, like I think I know who I am. Yeah, I think I know who I am. I was just reading it, you know, because it was in the notes. And sometimes when you're a little bit nervous, and people might say, well, how are you nervous because you're always on stage? And I said, yes, I know that, but sometimes you read about yourself. So we're going to share the MC duties. We have about 3 hours. Yes. We're going to see if we can stretch it to 5, and then we're all going to have a swim at the wave pool after, yeah?
That's right.
So it's an honor to be here because, you know, it's languages connects us to the land, and it is central to our identity, you know, and usually if I hear someone speaking, I kind of know, you know, obviously you might see someone and you can kind of work out which part of Australia they're from, but once you hear their language, you kind of go, aha, I know where this person's from, yeah? And, you know, it is central to our identity, and it holds and transmits, I like that word, transmits our knowledge as well. Thank you.
Mayem Seongapa, welcome to Pulima 2023. Woo! It's been almost 3.5 years of waiting for all you language warriors, language carers, and language protectors to gather here on Larrakia country. The wait was worth it. Look around you, an attendance of probably about 1,000 people, I was told. My blood pressure kept going up as the numbers went. Almost double from 2019 when we were last here, Sean. Yeah. Signifies the importance and resilience of First Nations languages. Language is in the air that we breathe, the sky that navigates our pathways, in the ground that we walk on and toil our food from, the waterways, the oceans that we swim in and drink from. It is who we are. It is you and it is I. It is our identity. We will open our proceedings today with a welcome from country from Auntie Billawara Lee, or Auntie B, a senior elder from the Larrakia Nation of Darwin. She is a custodian of knowledge and proudly shares her Larrakia culture, lore, and language. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you.
Minister Burke, Ambassador Justin Mohammed, Senator Gosling. Darandara Minangurkuwa Bachiwa, Nayana Guraminba Bilawara Lee, Dumreligi to Gulumanajan Yajana Bachiwana. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Billawara Lee. Happy for you to call me Auntie B. I am a senior elder of the Larrakia Nation, the Larrakia Academic in Residence for Charles Darwin University, and a member director on the Larrakia Nation Board. More importantly, I am a member of the very large local Kabilo family, one of the family groups that make up the Larrakia Nation. I want to say Malid Mabachiwa, good day, to all of you who have joined us via the technology songlines. My name, Billawarra, means the red-tailed black cockatoo. It is an ancestral spirit being that brings about change. It is my totem and my heart dreaming. I'm acknowledged nationally and internationally as a Gadaminba Bali, a spirit doctor, and I am the Australian representative on an International Indigenous Grandmothers Council. And we are acknowledged as the wisdom keepers of the ancient sacred knowledge of our cultures. So I've recognised a few people from other countries here, and it was really good to hear. I've published 2 books, Star Dreaming and Healing from the Dilly Bag, and from that came a multi-award-winning podcast series called Ask the Specialist. And I pay my respects to my wawa who's in the room over here, Perawangi Puruntaramiri. He is another one of the experts on that podcast series. It is really good to be here with you all, and I'm really happy to welcome you to Gulumarajan, Larrakia country. And I thank you for the respect you show us, the traditional custodians of the land we gather on today. The Larrakia people are the traditional custodians of the land and waters of the Greater Darwin region, including Darwin Peninsula, the Cox Peninsula, most of Gun Point, rural Darwin, Darwin Harbour and adjacent islands and lands west of the Howard River. Our lands extend up to 50 kilometres inland, and we are saltwater people. I pay my respects and acknowledge other elders that are here today, friends, special guests, and other Larrakia people. To my brothers and sisters from other First Nations from across this country and across the seas, a warm welcome from my heart. I know the dreaming still runs strong in our mind, body and spirits. Australian First Nations are the oldest continuous surviving civilisation and cultures on the earth. And the Larrakia people are the first sovereign nation of the mainland and the islands and waters of the Greater Darwin region. Our sovereignty has never been ceded or extinguished. Our civilisations are older than all the other acknowledged ancient civilisations on this planet. And before colonisation, our land and environments were our school and universities, supermarket, pharmacy, entertainment and spiritual centres. We continue to be the longest enduring educators and teachers, linguists, medical practitioners and healers, diplomats, researchers, astronomers, artisans, environmentalists, horticulturalists, fire masters, water managers, athletes, builders, traders, and so many other roles that make us a truly strong, flexible society. One day I hope that Australia, if not the world, celebrates this enduring, deep, rich history, and they understand and learn from our wisdoms. I've spent nearly 4 years working on reviving the Larrakia language. I won't tell you the story of how it got flogged out of us. I'll do that on Friday. And, you know, the Larrakia language, which is the first language of the Larrakia people, spoken by all ages of society, and was used to teach our children and grandchildren about culture, ceremony, and their kinship relationships, and about their country and their environment. When we talk our language, we are talking on behalf of our ancestors from thousands of years ago, and continue now in passing on this important language knowledge to our descendants. We are looking at it through an Aboriginal lens of generations of peoples. Knowing our language is so important because it teaches us who we are, and then we teach this to our children. It is not just a set of words. It's about our history, it's about our heritage, it's about our culture, our spirituality. It's about our way of life that our ancestors have fought and died for. I am so grateful for this language journey that I'm on, and I'm deeply thankful for Pulima being held here on my traditional lands. And that gives me the opportunity to meet so many of you wonderful people and to be solidly immersed in this beautiful energy that's here today. So it is on that note, it is my privilege on behalf of my fellow elders, past and present, to welcome you all to Gwialwa Daranyiki, our land. Welcome to my saltwater home of great food, friendly people, beautiful beaches, spectacular sunsets, the most amazing lightning storms. And I know some of you might disagree with me, but I think it's the best weather in Australia at the moment. You are walking on Larrakia land, and when you leave, our song will stay with you. So I hope your stay in my country is a safe and nourishing one, that the spirits of my ancestors watch over you while you are here. All that I ask in return is that you walk softly on Mother Earth and treat her with love and respect as the Larrakia people do. And in these difficult times, Milama Damra, be well. Mamak Bachua. Thank you. See you later.
Thank you. Yo. Thank you. The next song is a song about woman dance. jagala mani bolongoy bolongoy wala mani jimbele dari mana vere mana ma bolongoy bolongoy wala mani la jagala 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 jingara ramena jingara jagala bajari ne jibada dari mana vere ngala je enga jaga vere gine enga vere ma udare jaga vere mana ba udare dari ma vere mana ba jagala 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 mani bolongoy bolongoy ada mani la jimbili di malabang dari mana dari bigai wana bigai tu hai tu ni mak na mabulu ribe kenap jadi woi Thank you for having us here. Thank you very much. Thank you. This is all my little crew. Ribe. marimus narbori. Eko osmarano. O sao sawese. Opem no noroglisi. Op carpenteria. Idelia kiribana. Ma pena kaseredi debe nagerwa gide marimu narbori. Osmarano sasawese. Opem no noroglisi. Op carpenteria. Opem no noroglisi. Op carpenteria. Idelia kiribana. Ma pena kasiridi debe nagerwa gide maribus narbori. Osmarano sasawese. Opem no noroglisi. Op carpenteria.
Big hand again, once again. Big yes to all of our dancers, the Red Flag dancers and the Negwam dance troupe. Also, Keimeaso to Auntie B for her warm welcome. We would also like to acknowledge our distinguished guests, the Minister of Arts, the Honourable Tony Burke, Senator Luke Gosling, First Nations Ambassador Justin Mohammed, members of the Directions Group are all here today. Our welcome to the International First Nations delegates and the talented cultural performers, creators, special guest speakers we will invite to stage over today's proceedings.
It is fantastic to be gathered here today. Welcome to all of you here today. As so many driven people with all the same desire to support, strengthen, and see our languages flourish. We have an incredibly full program today, launching both Australia's engagement with the International Decade of Australia's Action Plan, Voices of Country, You will hear from a panel of elders, Indigenous thought leaders from around the world. They will share their experiences ensuring their languages are strong, supported, and flourishing. I will have a yarn with one of the most exciting musical artists about the importance of our languages in our lives and careers as entertainers as well.
Thank you, Sean. In the second session, we will launch Voices of Country. We will hear from the Directions Group about their journey to develop Australia's action plan. Joining them is the Minister for Arts, the Honourable Tony Burke, MP. I will be in conversation with William Tilmouth, a member of the Stolen Generation, to discuss the return of language and the return of agency. You can also look forward to musical performances in language, showcasing the incredible journey of our cultures.
First, let us bring to the stage the Commonwealth Minister responsible for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages and Minister responsible for Target 16 to launch Australia's International Decade of Indigenous Languages.
It gives me great pleasure to introduce the Honourable Tony Burke, Minister for the Arts and Minister for the Employment and Workplace Relations. Please make welcome Minister to the stage.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome, Ambassador, and to Luke Gosling, the local MP. But thank you in particular to RDB for welcoming us to country. I think many people, and I expect this is true of nobody here today, but many people in Australia, I think, sometimes forget just how generous it is to be welcomed to country. You think of all the things that could be said, and somebody says, welcome. There is a generosity in that. And there's a similar generosity extended to the rest of Australia in the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And I'm certainly proud to be part of a government that is hoping the rest of Australia responds with the same level of generosity and decency later this year. I'll be saying a little bit more later about the action plan and the work that the Directions Group has done. But let me, just in this moment, say something about why the International Decade of Indigenous Languages is so important. And if I can begin with a really brief story. I was Australia's Environment Minister 10 years ago. And I'd originally become politically active very passionately about an area of Australia known as the Daintree Rainforest and wanting to see it protected. This is when I was in my teens. And so when I became Environment Minister, I thought, I want to go there. I want to go to the Daintree Rainforest. I want to meet the traditional owners of the wet tropics. And I was shocked because the traditional owners didn't have the same sense of celebration of that decision in the 1980s. And I asked why. And they said, well, you protected it for environmental values, but not cultural values. How do you separate them? And in that moment, I think I started to get a glimpse of understanding why language is so important. Because traditional owners of the wet tropics, they said to me, you keep trying to separate things. This bit's environment, this bit's language, this bit's culture, this bit's music. It's all connected. You can't protect the country without protecting language. You can't protect culture without protecting language and song and dance and art and story. They're all the same story. And out of that, I think if there's one second thought that I'd give for the decade we're about to embark on around the world, and obviously it's not simply what we're launching here relevant to all the First Nations of Australia, to all the elders, to all the ancestors, but indeed for the elders and ancestors of First Nations around the world. many of whom are represented here right now, with one very simple concept. At its heart, there is no such thing as translation. If you do the exercise of taking some of the lyrics of one of your favourite songs and picking a few languages on Google Translate and then eventually translate them back to the beginning, and you end up with completely different words. Because language doesn't have another language as its reference point. Language has country as its reference point. It has culture as its reference point. It has story. It has heritage. And in every language, there are words for which there is no other word in any other language. And for those emotions, ideas, concepts to forever live on this planet, language must live there too. When the United Nations made a decision for a decade for Indigenous languages, they made the same decision that Australia made when we adopted number 16, target 16 in our Closing the Gap targets. And that is that the decline that we have seen year after year after year must end, and it must be replaced with an increase in First Nations languages around the world, being spoken, being lived, growing and thriving. It's a decision of the world. It's a decision that Australia is here to celebrate, and it is a change that will alter what it is to live in communities throughout the world when the language, the heritage that carries back to the first sunrise is something that we know will live there forever. That's the mission, that's the target, and that's why we're here today.
Thank you, Minister Burke, for your commitment and your presence here today. It is by starting with truth-telling that we can truly begin to reconnect with our culture and language.
A dedicated decade for Indigenous language brings renewed hope that through new partnerships, international collaboration, and domestic action, we can turn the tide.
Thank you, Sean. I would now like to welcome Nicole Smead, a Wurrumi woman of mixed ancestry, a musician, a poet. Nicole will perform an original, enigmatic piece, Gugara Kura Guaya, in Gumia Darwal language. Please welcome Nicole Smead.
Weebu Barabagi Tir Nicole Ngata Wurrumai Birpai Galban. My name's Nicole, I'm a Wurrumai Birpai woman. I was asked to perform a poem in language today, but poetry isn't just spoken and written word. Like our languages, it's found in country, it's in the air we breathe, it's in the relationships we have with each other, it's in art, and it's in music. So I'm going to sing a poem today that was written along the banks of Bungli, the Shoalhaven River. And so this poem is in Gumia Darawal, and I'd like to give a big shout out to my brother Jacob Morris, who helped me translate this into language back in 2019. It's called Gugara Kuragaya, and Gugara Kookaburra Gaku has a very special job of waking up the sun every morning. So this poem, song, is about coming together as mob with pride and strength in our culture and in our languages, and heralding the dawn of a new day. Jurawalanyang Babuladiri Ganbi Jurawalanyang Galulali Jurawalanyang Babuladiri Ganbi Jurawalanyang Galulali Jilinji Jurawalanyang Jugulong Marmalga Wagamahari Jibirnji Jurawalanyang Galulali Marmanagu Gujigalali Garawanga Blawila Nangari Gujigalali Garawanga Blawila Wianga Bumura Nabu Jagapa Wianga Bumura Nabu Jagapa Gugara 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 Kurgaya 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 Gugara 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 Kurgaya.
Mayor Sir Nicole, that was breathtaking. I would now like to welcome to stage an exceptional panel of international and national language experts to share with us the importance their countries place on the protection and revitalization of Indigenous languages.
To co-chair this panel, we welcome the inaugural ambassador for First Nation languages. Garang Garang, man. Idris Elba looked like should be on the next James Bond. Justin Muhammad. And also Yangatjara Anango woman Karina Lester. Will everyone please come to the stage to take a seat? Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, for that great intro. He couldn't help himself. But one young Nayin, Justin Muhammad Garangarang Awe, I'd like to say thank you for the great welcome here and pay my respects to the Larrakia peoples of the lands which we are meeting on. Thank you, Ani B, for that knowledge and the welcome that you give, and the Minister, just in his words, how important these welcomes are. And it just kind of touched me when he was talking, you know, for everything that's happened to First Nations people right across this globe. For here in Australia, First Nations people from the most northern parts of Australia to the most southern, to the east, to the west, these welcomes are happening and are done from the heart and welcoming people from all across these waters to this beautiful land here. So thank you, Ani B, for that beautiful welcome. As mentioned, Sean got my title a little bit mixed up, but I am the inaugural ambassador for First Nations people, and it's both an honour and a privilege to be here with you, and this panel that we have, this session we've got up ahead of us, which you'll hear from many experts in this area who's dedicated their life to Indigenous languages. It's going to help us to go take a deep dive about the dedication which you'll see through all these panel members and celebrate the Indigenous languages we have right across this very big globe of ours, and this meeting today bringing many of those nations here through online and in person. In my role as the entrusted, I'm entrusted as the First Nations, with the First Nations Australia, to put our perspectives and interests into the Australian policy, something that hasn't been done before. As I've spoken a few times, I've already been up here since Monday for a few groups, that our nation and our governments of the past have often had their back turned to this rich culture that we have here through languages, our connection to land, our stories. But slowly that turning around and noticing the value that we're going to bring and what we can bring and what we have done for tens of thousands of years. So this role includes making sure that our interests and our rights are well presented across the globe in many of our United Nations assemblies and across the human rights spectrums. And this year and across this next decade, during the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, it will also be my privilege to champion for First Nations Australia's languages on the global stage. Our languages are not just words, they are keepers of memories, bearers of ancient knowledge, whispers of ancestors, and they are resonant with the pulse of the people that are gathered here today. And I want to thank each one of you for being here and building into that tapestry of our Indigenous languages. But how Ani B touched on it in her welcome, that there were moments in history when our languages almost succumbed to the echoing silence. Many are still under threat. Their words are fading with each generation, taking with them the tapestry of our cultural memory and ancestral wisdom. However, as we know as First Nations people, as Indigenous people of the world, our spirit remains undaunted, our resilience unwavering. Every Indigenous language, every word, every story adds to the world's vibrant cultural spectrum. So today, it's more than just a meeting of minds. It's also a gathering of hearts. Let us share not just the achievements, but also our dreams and our hopes and of our languages. Our goal for this panel today is not just to have the highlight of First Nations languages through what is done through research, what is done through many of the practices to keep it alive, but also the vibrant tapestry that it brings to our communities locally, our nations, and across the world. It brings us together as one. So without going any further, I'd like to pass now to my co-facilitator, Karina, who will map out a little bit about what the panel is going to hopefully and what we're aiming to achieve. And we're going to share the great honour of introducing and speaking with many of our distinguished guests on here and also online. So I'll hand over to Karina now. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is very exciting. Not that I can, like Sean said, can't see anyone in the audience, so really grateful to be part of this event. Long time waiting, and this is such an amazing turnout as well, like Darren said from the very beginning as well. So fantastic to have this great lineup of people. As you all know, this has been a long journey for many of us in this audience who have been speaking up very strong about our languages and languages across this nation as well. So I think back in 2019, when we last held our Pulima, here it was the International Year of Indigenous Languages. And fast track to 2023, or 2022, which last year they launched the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. So this is a wonderful opportunity for everyone to come together and to launch now Australia's action plan and launch our journey for our next 10 years and beyond for our language work and the amazing work that each and every one of you do in this room in keeping our languages strong and thriving and flourishing as well. So we have an amazing panel lined up here. We have someone joining us also with Aluki in Canada who will be speaking from way over there, who will join us. And this panel is just giving everyone a bit of a snapshot what is happening at a global level and what people are doing in their own countries. And this is some little insight into the area of the language work that is happening across the world and across this globe as we've launched the decade last year, and there's a bit of a reunion of those who attended the International Decade for the launch of that action plan as well. So it's wonderful to see everybody. Sorry, I'm losing all my notes here, so just bear with me. So there is, as I said, I'm hoping that Iluki is joining us online, so if she is available, hopefully it's an opportunity now for me because this session here is talking about two of the 4 outcomes in the Global Action Plan. So one of the areas that we're focusing on as a part of our themes is the learn, teach and transmit. And the other outcome that we're really wanting to hear from the panellists also is around to ensure the legal recognition of our languages and the diversity of our languages as well. So it's just a snapshot for everybody to hear and see what is happening at the international level and to hear from other countries. So I want to ask a question to Iluki, who is joining us from Canada. Iluki, in Canada, you have legislation to protect Indigenous languages, and like Australia, you have multiple languages in Canada. So my question to you as the first panellist, if you could do a little bit of an introduction of where you're talking from and the country that you're part of and connected with. And this is the question: can you tell us a bit about your country's experience? We'd be interested to learn what difference language legislation made to ensure your languages are strong, supported, and flourishing in a multilingual context. So welcome, Iluki.
Namik, thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this panel. I'm very happy to be here with you, although virtually. My name is Aluki Kutuk. I am the president for Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated, that represents the interest of Nunavut Inuit. I am also a member of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. I am an Inuk and I speak Inuktitut. Inuit are the indigenous peoples of the circumpolar region transcending international borders across 4 different countries from Chukotka in Russia, Alaska, Canada, and Kalatlit Nunat or Greenland. I am joining you this morning from Iqaluit, Nunavut. Nunavut is the eastern part of the Canadian Arctic. Inuit make up 85% of the population, and Inuktitut is the public majority language used. In fact, Nunavut is the only jurisdiction in Canada where the public majority language, homogeneously spoken, is an Indigenous people's language. Across Canada, according to UNESCO, there are 86 distinct Indigenous peoples' languages. Of those languages, comparatively speaking, Inuktitut, along with Cree, are most predominantly spoken. Since the current Prime Minister was elected in 2015, he has consistently stated that there is no relationship more important to Canada than the one with Indigenous peoples. To demonstrate the commitment to the importance of this relationship and as a step towards achieving reconciliation, Canada passed Bill C-91, an act respecting Indigenous languages, on June 21, 2019. This was very significant. Not only was it passed in 2019, the International Year of Indigenous Languages, but it was passed on June 21, which in Canada since 1996 is recognized as National Indigenous Peoples Day. As a backdrop to this, Canada as a country has been founded on the myth of bilingualism and biculturalism. I refer to it as a myth because, as I have already stated, there are currently 86 Indigenous peoples' languages across the land now referred to as Canada. In 1969, Canada enacted the Official Languages Act, which recognized both French and English as the official languages of Canada. Through the official recognition of French and English, there was, in the same stroke, of Indigenous cultures. As Indigenous peoples, we grew up knowing that our languages and our cultures are valued less by Canada. In the 2016 census, mother tongue speakers are recorded. For Nunavut, there is a heading that reads Official Languages, and it lists 11,020 English, 595 French. And there is another heading when you go further down that reads Non-Official Languages and lists 22,600 Inuit languages. As significant as the passing of the Indigenous Languages Act was, as Inuit, we voiced our concerns about the shortcoming of the legislation. With the diversity in Indigenous peoples' languages and the diversity in needs to meet language vitality, Inuit advocated for an Inuit-specific language legislation. Section 10.1 of the Indigenous Languages Act states, and I quote, "A federal institution or its agent or mandatory may, in accordance with the regulations, provide access to services in an Indigenous language if the institution or its agent or mandatory has the capacity to do so, and there is sufficient demand for access to those services in that language." In comparison, Section 22B of the Official Languages Act of Canada states, and I quote, "Every federal institution has the duty to ensure that any member of the public can communicate with and obtain available services from the head or central office in either official language, and has the same duty with respect to any of its other offices or facilities in Canada or elsewhere, where there is significant demand for communications with and services from that office or facility in that language." This seemingly small difference between the two acts creates on a daily basis a stark inequality in Nunavut on how languages are treated. For instance, although Inuktitut is the public majority language in Nunavut, Inuit cannot expect to receive essential public services in Inuktitut. This includes in the public education system. In comparison, the 595 speakers in Nunavut are afforded the necessary support and resources through the Official Languages Act to expect French language of instruction in school. In November 2020, the Canadian government committed $10,769,000 to expand the French school. The then Federal Minister of Official Languages, Minister Joly, stated, "All Canadians have the right to a quality education in their first and second languages, regardless of the community to which they belong." The unsaid part of that statement implied to us Inuit that this is so only if you are a speaker. It doesn't matter if, as Inuit, that we are the public majority in our homeland, and both these languages, French and English, are minorities. I re-emphasize the difference between the two language legislations in Canada. One requires that services meet a demand, while the other requires that services are available only when there is capacity. At the timing of the Indigenous Languages Act, I was told that this was only the beginning. Time will tell if we get to a point where there is equality of rights and resources allocated to colonial languages and Indigenous peoples' languages. I hope and I envision a time where, as Inuit, we will be able to live with dignity in our own homelands. In the meantime, as I conclude my contribution to this panel discussion, I would like to remind all Indigenous peoples who are tuning into this discussion that each and every time any of us utter words in our own Indigenous languages, it is an act of self-determination. We are asserting our rights to self-determination. Ati, ukaw sangaw tang tinya ato katakta ato kong nakangata. Kuyan nami. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aluki. It's wonderful to see you on the screen, and it's wonderful to hear your very wise and wisdom words. I really am grateful, and I'm sure everyone just here in this audience are feeling very motivated, and absolutely it is our rights to be speaking our languages. So thank you again, Aluki. Before I ask my next question to Signet from the Torres Strait Islander, I just wanted to give a bit of a snapshot, and most of you may know this around what is happening here in Australia and the work that is happening behind the scenes. And we heard it from Minister Burke speaking up about the work of the Directions Group. When the decade was set for 2022, Australian government moved quickly, swiftly to form the Directions Group to do the work on developing Australia's own action plan as well. And this is a big part of what today is all about. As you know, and I believe there are copies of these action plans that are on your seats as well. So there's been some great works behind the scene leading up to the decade, and of course the works that Minister Burke had spoken about around closing the gap targets as well. So Target 16 is about our culture and our languages being supported, being strengthened, and being flourishing for the next generations, for our babies, for our children, and our great-grannies to come. So this is exciting stuff for Australia of what we are doing with our languages and how we have government willing to work with peoples and working with all of you who are working in your languages as well. This is the time for us to be lifting our languages and speaking strong for our languages. And the timing seems to be right at a political level, as we heard from Minister Burke, and also the amazing work that the Directions Group has done. There's also been the forming of what we know as the Languages Policy Partnership to support more of the Target 16 with a great group of real passionate language people sitting around the Language Policy Partnership. So it is moving forward, and we are going to move past 10 years and beyond and do the things that are rightfully ours, that we own our languages, and we all are speaking very strong and passionate about that, and keep up the amazing work. So the timing is right for Australia to be really working closely together, working with our leaders, working with our elders, working with our language groups to really then lift our languages and the diversity of our beautiful languages across this nation as well. So my question to Signet, and Signet is from the Torres Strait Islander. I understand there has been the establishment of the Languages Association in the Torres Strait region. So my question is, what do you see as the language aspirations of the region that look to the generations of today and tomorrow? Signet, thank you. Is Signet joining us? You got a mic there? It's on. Thank you, Signet.
Sorry, can you rephrase that, please? I only speak language. You might have noticed me, I was keeping my head down. I just got my eyes looked at by a doctor. So, yeah, he told me to don't look at the bright lights. Yes. Well, obviously, my name is Signet Trepu. I hail from an island called Mabuiag Island. In my language, it's called like Mabuiag Gutfiki Kupeadras. It's in the center of Torres Strait. We now call Zenat Kes, in between Cape York and Papua New Guinea, a group of islands. I think it's very important what we hear and what we are here to discuss and to speak. And not only that, but to actively mingle between our families who are attending this conference, this get-together. It's a big privilege for myself to be here on behalf of my people, my campfire, my clan, my tribe. I'm with a few of my people here, but language is very important for us. Language created us. We are identified by language. Language is who you are. Language determines our sex. Language determines who you are. And it is very important that we speak our language. I respect the bridge language that we use today. We need to have that, but until you get very, very experienced and be an expert in your own tongue, then you should use it otherwise. Torres Strait, or Zenat Kes, today now is a home to many, many, many cultures and many languages. The originality of the area is fading slowly, so it's up to us to put our arms around it and gather it together again, put the embers or blow embers so the fire will keep on burning, and put more wood in the fire, because language keeps us alive. It's not only a living particle in our lives, but it also is a bridge that takes you from one end of the world to the other. It's a bridge that we use today, and this bridge costs money as well, which we are now very dependent today. But yeah, Torres Strait is a name, as you all know, given to us to identify us as a group of islands that was found by somebody from a long way place. But the original name that we come up with was Zenat Kes. So it is now known as Zenat Kes in the original tongue, both Miriam and Kalalagauya, which are the two main languages. And then we speak also Creole, broken English, but we are determined to get back to the originality of our language. It is important that we need to be who we really are and be serious about who we really are, rather than just act on it, imitate people from across the world. No, we need to pronounce ourselves as the original person and a place, to be placed here in the area that God has provided for you and I. In saying that, I also, all the contributors to this gathering, it's a big empire that we come to blow the embers to put keep the fire going. And when we go back to our homes or our respective areas, we'll make sure that fire burns there as well. In saying that, I also everybody who has contributed to this gathering, and I hope that this fire keeps everybody warm throughout this week. Thank you very much. Kemeso.
Wonderful, Signet. Thank you so much. You're right that we do have to go back and keep those fires burning as we do our work in our languages across this nation. And it's wonderful to hear your words again, Signet, around making sure those fires are burning. Thank you very much. I want to welcome Dan. Saw you there at the Paris launch. It was wonderful to see everybody again. Fantastic that you are here today. The integration of, and forgive me because I'm not a speaker of Maori language, but Te Reo Maori and Maori knowledge, traditions in mainstream spaces is growing in New Zealand. And so can you share with us some critical approaches that institutions take to enhance the understanding and value of Indigenous languages and knowledges across the wider society? So thank you, Dan. Welcome.
Kia ora, Karina. O turu o koutou katoa ai hui mai nei. Ka tika he mihi hoki ki a Auntie B mō tō mihi ki a koutou katoa kua tai mai. Ai runga i te kaupapa tāhua nei, nō reira tēnā koe. O te rā ngā tangata whenua o tēnei rohe o Kota Larakai. He mihi nui ki a koutou, karanga mai, karanga mai, karanga mai. Ngā mihi mai tōku maunga ki tō maunga, ngā mihi mai tōku moana ki tō moana, ngā mihi mai tōku tipuna ki tō tipuna. Tēnā koutou katoa. It was just important in my culture that we acknowledge the people who the first voice of the day, so I just acknowledged Auntie B, and then the home people, and then I just brought greetings from my mountains to your mountains, and my waters to your waters, and my elders and ancestors to your elders and ancestors. He moko puna tēnei, Ngati Maniapoto, Waikato Tainui, me Ngati Whanaunga, i te tau tōku pāpā, i te tau tōku māmihia Pākehā hau. Ai, ko te nukuro tōku ingoa. Another one of our tikanga or practices is to introduce oneself by talking about one's people. And so I just gave my Māori tribal history there on my father's side. And then I mentioned my ancestry on my mother's side. And the term I used was Pākehā. And I had a great discussion here with Ngā Hiwi this morning, and he gave me an understanding for what that meant. It's a word for non-Māori, and we can delve into that. Heoi. Today it's not about me. Today it's about a role I'm privileged to hold as UNESCO New Zealand Commissioner for Culture. And yes, I did meet you and others here in Paris at the launch. And I think in introducing myself that way, that is one of the critical approaches that we are taking to enhance the understanding and value of Indigenous knowledge and ways of knowing and being and doing, is that we go through our rituals because they are from place and they are about relationships with place. And of course the language is one of those key ways in which we can convey that and can express that. Now my background is in science, and that taught me one way to make sense of the world, and what I've come to discover, and I need to confess that I'm on my learning journey, my language learning journey. Te Reo Māori was not my first language. In fact, in contrast maybe to Canada, we have two official languages in New Zealand. One is sign language and the other one is Te Reo Māori. English actually isn't even an official language in our country, which is an interesting scenario, and I'm sure Ngā Hiwi will mention some of the impacts and ramifications of that. But in my journey into learning Te Reo, what I've learned is that it's a window into connecting with and relating to and ultimately understanding and making sense of the world and our place in the world. And so that is the critical thing that learning the language brings in those wider places in society. I work at a university. We've just launched a Māori language strategy 2 years ago. And it's not just about translating names of buildings and numbers of things. It's actually about deeply embedding Māori ways of knowing and being and doing into the operational work of the university. It's an opt-in for members of staff. There's no pressure on anyone to engage in that space. However, we have been inundated with members of our colleagues who have no background in te reo, who want to learn, who want to understand how to introduce themselves in the right way and know and be and explain things in te reo. Now, one of the things we do at UNESCO New Zealand is, as one of the institutions that engages in the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, is we're actually extremely privileged. We have, legal protection for the language. We have amazing institutions, which Ngahiba will talk about, to ensure, or maybe that's too strong a word, but to ensure at least that there's resource going into language and its revitalisation. Our job at UNESCO is to make sure that people around the world can hear about what that team is doing, can hear about the great things that have worked for us, about the challenges that we've faced and the challenges that we've overcome, and strategies and ways in which we can amplify that work and ensure the revitalisation of the language. All of us here know that divided will fall, but united will stand and prevail. And I've already heard this morning some wonderful stories of the work and effort that's going underway. So our job at UNESCO is to bring together the decade plan, similar to that I heard mentioned earlier this morning, and we're privileged to be able to share with the rest of the world what we're doing in New Zealand to revitalise that language. We do that by partnering, we do that by building relationships. That's why we're here, and we're grateful for the invite. And also in the work of UNESCO New Zealand, where for us language is inseparable to ancestral knowledge. And so we see it as a living and relevant aspect of our world, and so we amplify our understanding and the connections between our ancestral knowledge and ocean science, and connections even broader out into the Pacific, where we do that Māori language connection through Polynesia. So hopefully I've given you a bit of an insight into what the role of UNESCO is into contributing to the International Decade of Indigenous Language. Kia ora mai tātou.
Wonderful. Thank you. Fantastic to hear what is just happening across the ditch, as they say. It's great that there is this official recognition of your languages as well. So it's something we always think about and talk about here. I'm going to go over to my co-facilitator, First Nations Ambassador Justin Mohammed, to ask the next 3 questions. Thank you.
Thank you. As your mic's slowly fading. I understand, I'm sure, just listening to the first 3 speakers, we wish we could probably speak with them all day. There could be a whole lot more to unpack. Unfortunately, obviously timing and a whole range of things which we've got ahead of us. But I think we're only halfway through this panel session. The depth of knowledge and the richness which is already being spoken about already has really set the stage. And so I'm going to move into the next 3 speakers that we have on our panel. I want to hand to Gabriella, who will introduce herself, but also just a quick background in your research and publications. You support the idea of linguistics rights. So what action is needed to ensure the unification and support of logistics rights at a global level?
Well, thank you very much. And before I respond and introduce myself, I do want to give my gratitude for being welcomed here to Larrakia country. Thank you, Auntie B, for welcoming us. My name is Gabriela Perez Baez. I was born and raised in Mexico, which is a place of great indigenous cultural and linguistic diversity, but it's also a place where for the last couple hundred years there's been an identity, a mixed mestizo identity imposed as the nation state's identity in opposition to indigenous identities. That has meant that the percentage of the population that identifies as indigenous keeps decreasing year after year to the point where it's in the single digits, maybe 6% of the population identifies as indigenous. But this 6% is tremendously diverse. So there are over 300 languages spoken within this apparently small percentage. The diversity is so great that we really don't know how many languages there are. There's a dozen or so language families, so again, the diversity is tremendous. In 2003, Mexico passed the General Law of Linguistic Rights, and things changed dramatically for the better. For example, in research that I conducted with a team in 2014 to 16, we found that of the language revitalization efforts documented in Mexico, most of them had initiated after 2003. So suggesting this facilitation of revitalization efforts coming from within the communities, of course. Nevertheless, there's a lot of lack of implementation. The National Institute for for Indigenous Languages is vulnerable to being dismantled. This is a body, the government body, that is supposed to oversee the implementation of the law. So we are very worried. The greatest bulk of the diversity in what we call Mexico now is in what academics refer to as Mesoamerica. This is a region of linguistic and cultural diversity, but a lot of sharing and connection between the communities for thousands of years. But it is divided by geopolitical borders between what we call Guatemala and Belize and El Salvador and Mexico. So borders have a tremendous impact on this diversity and the ease of communication and connection between the communities. So I want to give you a case study related to borders and to push forward the need for some sort of declaration of linguistic rights at an international level as a way to recognize that linguistic diversity is about linguistic human rights. So I was involved in it. So I live and work in Oregon in the Pacific Northwest. This is a region of tremendous linguistic diversity as well. It's an area where language revitalization is mostly based on archival materials because the languages have been silenced over the last few decades, and communities are revitalizing from that point onward, not unlike many parts of Australia as well. This is the state of Oregon in the United States. It has a very important forestry and agricultural industry. That's what sustains the state. But the working force, the labor force behind these industries is of quote-unquote Mexican, Guatemalan, Hispanic, Latino. All of these homogenizing labels are used to talk about the origin of the people who sustain these industries. So we did a study during the COVID-19 pandemic to understand the impact of the pandemic on farm workers. And we discovered within a group of 300 people who we interviewed, we discovered 58 individuals who identified as speakers of indigenous Mesoamerican languages, and we identified 29 distinct indigenous languages within a group of interviewees of 300 people. So you can imagine the diversity. Now, we also found that those who identified as indigenous lost more weeks and months of work during the pandemic, relied on food banks, loans from family and friends, support from local schools and organizations at a higher rate than those who did not identify as indigenous. They also indicated less awareness about sick pay, family leave, and other relief services, and indicated a lower rate of awareness about COVID-19 testing, vaccines, and treatment. So this was greatly due to a lack of coordinated efforts to ensure that information was shared to them in a language-appropriate manner. They were considered Hispanic, Latinos. Information went out in English and Spanish in written formats. As I begin to close, I want to advocate for, again, considering linguistic human rights as critical to human well-being. International legislation does not address linguistic human rights adequately. It's only mentioned in the non-discrimination article in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development mentions the word language once. And this is despite the fact that it promotes quality of education for all, health and well-being, environmental protections. How can we be talking about these when we do not talk about the role of language in education, environmental care, health, and well-being? So in closing, I've given you a little snippet of a research project that brought home the need for advocating for linguistic human rights. This is the second year of a 10-year period of time in which we're trying to advocate for indigenous languages, and we have not made a move towards developing a Declaration of Human Rights or something akin to that that gives us global protection for linguistic human rights. So I hope that out of this gathering, one of the largest gatherings around the topic of linguistic diversity, linguistic language revitalization, I'm hoping that a working group can emerge to push forward some kind of international legislation to protect linguistic human rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it amazing when research is in First Nations, Indigenous peoples' hands, the story which it tells and unpacks and also challenges the constructs which we live in. So thank you for that presentation. We're going to move to our next speaker, which is Nahawi, and back over to across the ditch, as we say. But you believe legislation is crucial, as a crucial tool for ensuring language survival, a critical tool with that. Can you please describe the journey and success that Te Reo Māori has had through legislation in your time there?
Kia ora, Justin, and you do look like Idris, bro. I'm also looking forward to Sean telling his story of the origins of Kung Fu. But thank you, everybody, and thank you to the Arakia people who have welcomed us here today, Auntie B. Kia ora, thank you very much. It's a big thing for us New Zealanders to feel welcome in such a big country. But it also, I want to focus on three things, because 7 minutes is a blip in Indigenous time, right? In New Zealand, we have this thing called Māori time, right? And it does not follow the clock, okay? So here's the first thing. I want to talk about your legal protection. Our legal protection, or the Māori Language Act, came out of the Treaty of Waitangi, which was signed with the British Crown back in 1840, and subsequently tramped all over, not followed. All the guarantees in there, our land, our forest, our waterways, and our treasures were not looked after. In fact, they were taken from us. And in terms of our Indigenous language, just like here in Australia and in Canada and in the USA, there was a systemic push to ban our languages, to the point that our people protested. And this is the point I want to make too. Everything that has happened for Te Reo Māori has come out of our communities. So we established the Māori Language Act in 1987 because we finally have a process by which to address breaches of the treaty. For a long time we were told that our treaty wasn't worth anything until we took it to the International Court, and that led to a backtrack. So we have the Treaty of Waitangi. That's the basis, the foundation of the Māori Language Act, which underlines the New Zealand government's commitment to Te Reo Māori. So that's there. But the second thing is, you have to have your community behind you. You have to engage with them. And that's really, really important, because if you look at everything that has been established in Aotearoa, New Zealand, to support our language, from early childhood centres, the Kohanga Reo, through to primary school in Māori, to secondary school in Māori, and also tertiary education. So we now have a path from early childhood all the way through to tertiary education that our people can go through. So that infrastructure is there, established because our community pushed for it, and because our community went back and said, well, you've guaranteed this. Under the Treaty of Waitangi, you've guaranteed protection of our language. But still, by 2015, only 21% of Māori people still spoke our language, and only 2.75% of the total population spoke Te Reo Māori. The third thing I want to talk about is you have to know who your people are. You have to understand that you are competing with the most powerful language brand in the Western world. It's called English. And if you don't understand that, and you don't think that you have to compete with it, think about this. My children went through ECE in Te Reo Māori. They went all the way through to secondary school speaking Te Reo Māori. By the time they were 11 or 12, they stopped speaking Māori to me. And so one day, I had this brilliant idea to ask them why. And they said to me, Papa, all the cool songs are in English. Nobody speaks English on TV, and when they do, they savage our language. So his thing, my son's, his message to me was, nobody values our language, so why should we speak it? So you need to engage your children. You need to engage your parents. You need to engage your old people. And you also need to understand the wider society. It almost seems an absolute injustice that we have to rely on referenda as the minorities in these countries to get recognition of our rights. But despite that, despite what the result of any referendum is, you have to engage your community. And in order to do that, you have to understand who they are, how they think, and shape your language offering accordingly. So I want to just point to this little badge on my lapel, which I wear really, really proudly. This little badge is about, one, giving kindness to learners and potential learners of our language, because it is not our fault that the majority of our people don't speak our language. There's been a systemic push to ban our language and to turn us into brown white people, really. Hasn't worked, has it? The second thing you need to understand is by welcoming people, you include them in your family, and I feel very included in the Larakia whānau today. Thank you very much, Auntie B. So when you're looking at engaging people in your language, you need to understand who they are, and you need to make them a part of your language family, regardless of who they are. I know we prioritise our people, but we're at a point with most of our languages where we're struggling. So everybody we can bring into our house of learning is another reason that our languages will survive. The third thing I want to say in terms of this particular logo is that it's the evidence. Having great ideas is one thing, but being able to prove that they're actually relevant and will work requires research and testing. And so in my organisation, the Māori Language Commission in New Zealand, we don't get a lot of money. In fact, I think we actually get about $10.8 million a year to do what we have to do, which is, I think, a bit below what the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra gets. So it's really, really important that we spend our money wisely because we don't have a lot of it. I want to say thank you. What a beautiful bunch you are. You are the most resilient, athletic, and beautiful bunch of people I've ever met in my life. Ngā mihi nui, kia ora tātou.
Thank you. And who said you couldn't keep within 7 minutes? Well, thank you for that rich, just the journey which I know that we watch from this side in Australia, New Zealand has taken, and in some ways has inspired us. And I know that vice versa, that we've inspired each other along these journeys, and continue as we continue to try to keep and make sure that our languages stay strong with our next generations. The next speaker, which I want to introduce, is Dr. Richard Littlebear. Brought his own cheek squad, that's good. But it's interesting to note that there are 8 tribal nations in Montana, and we understand there was a policy shift in 1953 with some subsequent support for teaching language and culture on reservations. So the question I have is, can you describe the importance of standards and procedures in making of a legislation?
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, and my fans out there too. I was born on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation in Montana many, many years ago. And my first language is Cheyenne. It's an Algonquian-based language, and I've spoken it all my life. And I went through a period there where I thought that only learning English would be the way to go, because all around me that I saw were people who spoke English and yet they were well off. They had cars, televisions earliest, and all that. And I thought, well, that must be the way to go. So I went that way, and I even went so far as to become an English teacher. And then I got back home and found out that that was not the way it was. That much of the indoctrination that I had gotten, because I went to a government boarding school, so much of the indoctrination that I got really pushed English. And while English, I'm not trying to put English down, but while it is a good language, it doesn't cover everything. For instance, when I found out that much of my cultural and spiritual upbringing was done in Cheyenne, I always tell people it really upset my urinary tract. That's what I get for. I'm glad you guys could. Then I don't have to use the real word for that. Anyhow, that brought along a realization. It was one of my realizations that the Cheyenne language is not worthless. It's not below any other language because it has a whole body that can teach our children. And that's when I made the transition from being an advocate for English, and I'm still an advocate for English, but I been more of an advocate for the Cheyenne language and all indigenous languages. I thought it would only be just for the Cheyenne language because I was very insular and staying on the reservation. And then I went to Alaska and I worked there for 4 years, 10 years, traveling the whole state. And I found out there was so much diversity that was embedded in the country because of the language. And I was just blown away by that. So that was part of my transition into my advocacy for all indigenous languages. And I think our Montana state government has kind of joined that parade too, because it has really passed some transformative legislation. It has passed the Class 7 Act, which allows language groups to certify their own language teachers. That is really a good step. The next one the other one that they put in was Indian Education for All. And that's a state law that every school district must teach about the Native Americans that are in Montana. That is really good. And then lately there was a Montana Indian Language Preservation Program, again passed by the legislature, and that guarantees a certain amount of money for the language programs throughout the 7 reservations in the state of Montana. The other thing that has happened is that many of the people who teach the language are now becoming more adept at teaching the language, because in Class 7, it never allowed for training. It never allowed for methodology courses or anything like that. They just put them in there because people thought that just speaking the language, being fluent in it was good enough. They didn't train anybody to transfer. And I'm not putting down being able to speak the language fluently. It's just the idea that people thought it would be so good just to start teaching the language. And I was telling them, you know, that isn't the right way. If the school went out, for instance, if the school somehow did not have an English teacher, and you looked out the window and you saw a white person walking down the street, and you walked out there and say, "Hey, can you speak English?" And if they said, "Yeah," well, come on in and teach our kids language, the English language. They would not know. So ask them, "So what is an infinitive?" They wouldn't know. And speaking of infinitives, I still don't know what they are. That shows you how much practical use there was in my learning that stuff. So the thing that brought around this transformative change in the state legislature were practiced advocates of their language and of their culture, and they also knew how to navigate the legislative process of getting laws made. So that back in 1970 was the first real awakening that our language meant something. Prior to that, there was bilingual education, but bilingual education led to teaching the English language. It didn't have anything to do with our native languages. So that has since changed. So many of our people now start speaking the language even in public, and it's such a gratifying thing to hear that, to see that. And it's so gratifying, at least for me, to hear younger people talk. And I mean younger people. By that, I mean people who are 40 years of age. That has gone up because of COVID, natural mortality, and so forth. Our language is dying. Back in 2015, we had 566 speakers. After COVID, we had about 248. So even that has really made a difference. And now we're trying to revive it. We're teaching how to read and write it, and we're teaching them how to speak it, all grades. The only obstacle there is that sometimes the funding is so sporadic. And Montana has really tried to rectify that situation. I think for me, the really true progress that we will have made is when I can tell a joke, a clean joke, to a young person, and they laugh uproariously about it because they got all the nuances, they got all the humor that was embedded in that joke. That, to me, will signify that we are making progress. I appreciate the welcome, the really warm welcome that I've gotten here at this place. Some people are so friendly, and I really appreciate that. It's not that I like being disliked. It's just so nice to be able to talk to people who have the same interests that I do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, and I think it gives us all hope that legislation can make a difference. However, there's still a lot of work to keep going. So thank you for that, Dr. Richard Littlebear, and I'm going to hand over to my co-facilitator to take us to the final speaker and to wrap up. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Justin, and thank you to these panellists who have been speaking so wonderfully about just snapshots of what is happening across their country as well. So my question to Candice, and Candice was going to be here, was not going to be here. She is here now, which is fantastic to have her on this panel as well. So thank you for joining us. Candice, one of your passion areas of research has intersected language renewal and technology. As a scholar educator of Indigenous language, education and revitalisation, can you share some practical recommendations that contribute to effective learning, teaching and transmitting of language for intergenerational transfer? Thank you, Candice.
First of all, I'd like to mahalo nui to the Larrakia people for allowing us to be here on your traditional lands, elders past, present, and emerging. Aloha mai ka ko o wauno o Candice Kalimamo o Wahine Kapugala, no Hawaii mai au, mai kamoku puni nui o Keawe. My name is Candice Kalimamo o Wahine Kapugala. I am Native Hawaiian from the island of Hawaii. I'm a professor at the University of British Columbia on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Hunkamina Musqueam speaking people. In the early 1980s, in 1978, Hawaiian became an official language of the state. In the 1980s, a handful of parents and educators became committed to Olelo Hawaii, and thus began the Hawaiian language revitalization movement. We began with language nest preschools modeled after our Maori cousins here, and that grew into infant toddler programs, K through 12 education, undergraduate and graduate, and professional licensures, which is collectively now known as Hawaiian language medium education from cradle to career. From less than 50 children's speakers in the early 1980s to now approximately 3,800 children in our Hawaiian language medium education system, we see the impact of 40 years of sustained language work, commitment, passion, and vision. We need to continue, however, to promote Hawaiian language in Hawaii because we are still up against ideologies and perspectives that colonial and foreign languages to Hawaii still hold greater value in our traditional homelands. Now turning to the question at hand regarding technology. As an advocate of digital technologies for language revitalization and education, it is important to note that when Indigenous peoples are provided opportunities to learn their language, there is an abundance of creativity that flows to ensure that language not only survives, but thrives. This includes an imagined future for our Indigenous languages in all domains of life. Wherever we see, hear, embody English, as we are privileging English on this stage today, we should also be able to experience the exact same for our Indigenous languages, especially on our traditional homelands. So here are some practical recommendations. Use and support Indigenous community-centered and developed digital technologies. The foundations of these tools are grounded in Indigenous community values, ethics, and with the intention to empower and support community language goals. These tools are created and developed with community, by community, and just like the guiding principle of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, nothing for us without us. While there are many digital technologies that claim to save or support Indigenous languages, it may come at the expense of Indigenous peoples. Let's be mindful of technology that we use and interrogate who really is benefiting. Are these tools part of a short-lived campaign to satisfy and fulfill diversity, equity, inclusion requirements? Or is there a long-term commitment to support Indigenous communities and their language work? Identify and choose technologies that support your language goals based on resources that you have access to and or are available to you. There's a plethora of technology, many are free, many are not. Spending more money doesn't mean or indicate it's a better or more effective tool for language learning. We need to do our research. Choose tools that are inclusive of our languages. For example, for content creation and/or curriculum and material development, ensure that technology you use are supportive of your writing systems. At minimum, do not adapt your language to technology. We don't want to simplify our language just because other writings, or just because technology is privileging writing systems and is not yet sophisticated to accommodate our languages, whether written, oral, or signed. And lastly, to governments and funding bodies, invest in Indigenous peoples, Indigenous language organizations, and Indigenous communities so that we can make the informed decisions on how best to support our languages. That could be through education, cultural programming, materials development, and so forth. Let us, as Indigenous peoples, decide whether digital technology is the investment required to supplement and support our language work as we work towards recovery, renewal, reclamation, revitalization, and renormalization of our respective languages. I'll briefly note that Miramar is such an exemplar of a community-centered language software envisioned by Darren McKinney. Many of us know him here. While Miramar was originally created to revive Awabako language, it quickly became a software that was used across Australia, but across the globe as well. There are now over 500 plus Indigenous languages that are being supported by Miramar to help in reversing language loss. The reason it has so much impact is the fact that it is grounded and centered within community and has been community-driven in the approaches, methods, and designs since day one. Being community-centered was not an add-on feature. It is also hard to believe that there are less than a handful of employees at Miramar, yet the impact is tremendous and continues to expand. In closing, while technology can contribute to effective learning, teaching, and transmitting of language, do not neglect the human and living resources we have today that you can breathe with, learn from, and be in the presence of. Let's not take that for granted. Eola ka'olelo Hawaii, eola na olelo oiwi. May the Hawaiian language live. May our Indigenous languages live. Mahalo.
Thank you so much, Candice. What an inspiring panel and group of people who have come to share some of the amazing stories that are happening in their countries. And, you know, hearing from Signet talking about keeping those campfires going. When we finish and wrap it up here on Friday, we got to go back and continue the amazing work that we are all doing. And Signet's right in making sure that we might feel energised, but when we get home, we should be getting even more energised as we live and breathe our language, and we see our country flourishing and growing and looking amazing. We're a part of that country as well, and many of these panellists have spoken about it. They've spoken about some of the great benefits of legislation and what legislation has done and brought to their nation. And it's something that we don't have here in Australia. We don't have a languages legislation, and I certainly know that many of us who are working in this space are speaking up about a languages legislation. Many of us are talking up about some of the official recognition or regional recognition as well. So I'm certainly feeling very inspired and, you know, very humbled by the wise words that have been mentioned here. The need for collaboration and the need for that coordinated approach, which is a very big part of what this action plan is all about at a global level, but also for us here in Australia. We need to keep drumming that drum about working together, about the importance of our languages and about the importance of our culture and our country as well. So I'm very grateful to have been part of this team co-facilitating with Justin as our First Nations ambassador as well, who's in this very first position that's been created. So Australia government is really wanting to work with us, and I think it's time for us as First Nations peoples to really stand up now to speak strong and be proud of who we are and to keep our languages strong and alive. So thank you very much to this amazing panel. Please give them a round of applause.
Yeah. Now you're going to hear from members of the Directions Group who are in partnership with the Australian government and informed and developed Australia's National Action Plan for the International Decade of Indigenous Languages.
Please welcome back to stage the Honourable Tony Burke, MP, with Yolngu Elder, Gawara Wanambi, and Waka Waka woman Annalie Little to launch Australia's Action Plan. And you should all have a copy on your seats. Big hand. You will also find a translation of the beautiful words you're about to hear from Gawara with the copy of the action plan at your seats.
Yo namer bukmak. Manmak. Yo ngaranya ko Gawara Wanambi ka marango ngara yorngun. Bapuru emangru wanga pe. Urungun ngara tu Malia namer wanga tolo langkala. Nyor wanga weja ko wanga tango mere. Dia ko ngambal ko ngatil wal markin diang baladual kaya lango mere. Duang utan margi. Wanga mata mala ngalem rong buk mako uni ngalem rong ngurong oe mala wanga watango mala wawan ko mala dia ko ngambal ko ngakawai mata tual meritir ngalip nakon ngurong o kamoro ngalimurong bukmako ka ngalimurong kalango jamar kulio ngalimurong kalango marka yalang omrei walto ni maram yakawal tuali zebrachun kamoro nakon ngalimurong darok tuali mata malanya pijan belian dokadal wangawalal mata o darok kudual kamoro jangarato wanganyo yako yaman lakaraman darok ko mata ngarako lual mretir markap tu namere kamar dap tu namere darok ko mata ngarako lual mretir maradap tu namere ngarako ngoi rumbal ngai dual nakun ngai wangai nganak rako rumbal ngor pingor belingai ngarakal mamtur tia komedian ngaradal wayangan ngade mere ngorakal baba mere ngorakal mal ngaran dia komedi mata dual duanji mere rako ngoko ya magare ya no angawe ya ka uri poi wangare bokmar wanga kapo kadaro kuru perbalai yo rai magare ngona wanga likarakal tarok merengai wanga ngai ngari unga naku ngarali nganya ni wanga ngai ngari ligurupan ngai limrang tunna ngarali naku nganya wanga nguni wanga ngai lerain gurupan ngurungi darok tuan ngarali wanga yo aktual matau darok yang ngali murung ngai indi kanguru dawala ngoyan kamero bukmak ko yolngo tuale moro nena ka bukule mram tual wanga ngor longor mapungo tialatang bengo bara bengo ka bolono wengo yo I think the translation of this about my speech, I think if you got it there in English, my thank you.
Nunu Gaguru, Garinga Maran Jining, Ngajungi Annalie Little, Ngai Bayinga Larakia Mayanu, Ngiru Min Nunun Danji Balba. Thank you, Garawa, for your beautiful words. The Directions Group has 13 members, and we are spread all around Australia, each with diverse language knowledge and are on unique language journeys. It has been a pleasure to co-chair the Directions Group alongside Beau Williams on behalf of First Languages Australia. I would like to thank each member of the Directions Group for sharing their knowledge and language throughout our time together. I have learned so much from each of them. The Voices of Country is Australia's action plan for the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. It has been co-authored in partnership with the Australian Government and the Directions Group. True partnerships are about honesty, transparency, and listening to each other. This partnership was a success because the government recognised and respected the expertise of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander members. This is the first time the government and representatives of the languages sector have worked together in this way. This achievement we celebrate is marked by your presence, Mr. Minister Burke. We are so pleased that you could make it here today. The action plan has the needs of communities at its heart. It is a tool that governments and stakeholders can use to take action to see our languages flourishing and strong. Thank you. I will now hand over to Minister Burke.
Thanks, Annalie. I want to thank the Directions Group, their expertise, their passion, and for the action plan that we now launch. I'll let them speak for what the action plan involves. But just for a moment, let's imagine and picture what the destination looks like. Because these actions are all aimed at a different way of what it is for language in Australia. It's a destination where language is in the home. A destination where language is routinely and automatically in children's stories, the first stories that are read. It's where language is seamlessly in our school system. It's where language lives on the radio airwaves and music in song, both traditional and cutting-edge new. It's where language lives and breathes on country, and where language is then shared across communities, across the nation, and across the oceans. It's a good destination. This document, this work of the appropriately named Directions Group, gives us the direction on how to now move to that destination.
I hope everyone can find a moment to engage with Voices of Country. You will each find the copy underneath your seats. The action plan identifies 5 key themes which we felt should be Australia's high-level strategic focus for the International Decade. These are: stop the loss, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities at centre, intergenerational knowledge transfer, caring for country, and truth-telling and celebration. We will be asking the panellists a series of questions about each theme to learn more about the stories and people who have been instrumental in putting these together. Before we begin, I will note that the Directions Group members each only have 3 minutes to respond to their questions. I will hand to the Minister for the first question.
Thanks very much, Annalie. First of all, to Darren. Stop the loss. What does it mean to you, and why is it so important that this is the first theme?
Thank you, Minister. It's the one theme we shouldn't have. It's the one theme we shouldn't be speaking of. And to try and do some justice to speak on behalf of all of the languages and all of the people and our knowledge holders and our language holders is difficult. And we will hear from the rest of the directions group here who are going to give voice to what it all means to stopping the loss, because it underpins it all. We have to be brave to also acknowledge the situation which we're in to be able to stop the loss, to understand it. And just one simple analogy which I have is that through all the efforts we are still doing, through all the efforts we are achieving, through the smiles and the happiness, but the sadness which is there, our languages are sitting on a knife's edge. And every single day that knife's edge is getting sharper. It's a hard thing to think about. It's a hard thing to acknowledge. But for me, that's the reality of where we are sitting, and we need to stop the loss. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you very much, Darren. Vicky, could you please tell us how we can turn the tide on language loss and create more outcomes on the ground from a national perspective?
Thanks, Annalee, and hi, everybody. I think, stopping the loss is one thing. It's not enough. We have to turn the tide. So we've talked about that in our document, and we've been pushing for that, and we've heard off you, Minister, about the destination, and that's absolutely where we want to be. And we are in a time of change, and the line's in the sand, and we are out of time. So to turn that tide, we need to those things that we've heard off the international panel and the rest of us mob will be talking about, and it's in that document. We're talking about legislation as protections. We're talking about policies and those kinds of things, and systemic change within the way, in the relationship that we've developed between the government and our group, and that needs to continue and through the departments and how those things operate, and that model we were talking about earlier with autonomy and self-governance of the decision-making and resources. And of course, resourcing is one of my bottom lines that I think, it takes those resourcing. We all have our energy, we have our families and our communities, but resourcing helps to make it happen. And, I think I spoke about the $1 billion a year for the next 10 years formula, and I thought I'd say it out loud. It's something, it's the level of commitment where we've got to go to reach that destination, those big visions. And the current status quo won't make it if things remain the same. So I'm really thankful for hearing your words, Minister. It was inspirational and gave me hope. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vicky. Letha, the second theme goes to the role of communities. And can you take us through this concept of the need for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities to be central, at the absolute centre of this work?
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Minister. Being centre means being community-led and self-determination. When we talk about language, we talk about grassroots, and sometimes being caught up in the governmental web, we soon forget that it is our communities that are at the centre of maintaining and keeping our languages. So a lot of systems in the government has to recognise that a lot of resources has to go into community. It has to be led by community, for community, and community needs to be in charge the whole way through their language journey and not be determined by governmental demands or pressure. Thank you.
Garawa, what does community-led and self-determination mean from a Yolngu perspective?
Well, thank you, Annalee. Firstly, I need to describe the people and the languages in the community of Kapuyak, where I come from. Very many different clan groups and their languages are spoken, sung and cried in the community, and this is the same for other Yolngu communities in the East Arnhem Land. But we, people, languages, and the places are all related. Secondly, therefore, self-determination in keeping our language strong has to follow our common ground, which we call Yalkri, and translated in English is ancestral protocols. It created and left by our ancestral beings such as honeybees, sharks, crocodiles, for us Yolngu people to follow and keep our kin, country, and language safe. It is not a human-made, but it's ancestral governance that we still follow now. Thirdly, the ancestral governance, which is self-determination for our community, is coming to life today through Wako, great-great-grandmother Yappa, great-great-mother Mari, great-mother Ngandi, mother Wako, own group, kin relationship. My Wako group has their own language. That's the same for my Yappa, Mari, Ngandi, and my clan group. We are related and we always make decisions together as our ancestral beings did a long time ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Garawa.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Garawa. And in the reference you make there to ancestors and to elders, it really leads to the question I wanted to ask Des, which goes to the intergenerational nature of what needs to be done as part of this action plan.
Thank you, Minister. And Yamagari Nindali, hello everyone. Des Crump, Gamilaroi man from southwest Queensland, and thank you to the Larrakia Nation and Auntie B for the warm welcome. Intergenerational knowledge transmission is at the heart of what we do. It's the passion, it's what drives us. It's why we're here today, to ensure that the knowledge of our elders, that language and cultural knowledge is passed on. And so we're, I guess, agents of transmission to make sure that that process happens, whether it's in the schools, community, homes, on country, all those different spaces where that transmission needs to occur. One of the sayings that we say in language is we stand on the shoulders of our elders and those people who've gone before us, and it's beholden upon us to ensure that that knowledge is passed on so that in 10 years' time, at the end of the decade, we have a legacy for our children, for our grandchildren, to say, this is how far we've come. We're hearing language in all spaces, government agencies, right through to community spaces. It's part of that everyday life. That's I guess, the legacy we'd like to see at the end of 2032 for our young people.
Thanks, Des. Thank you for that, Des. There are certainly many systemic changes required. Clayton, how can the government better support First Nations systems for intergenerational knowledge transfer?
Thanks, Annalie. Nungunura. Everyone, very happy to be here. Thanks to Auntie B and Larrakia people for welcoming me back. Yeah, look, I think there's some really powerful things, Annalie, that the Australian government could do to support our people with regard to intergenerational transmission. You know, remembering that we didn't voluntarily give up our languages and cultures. In that sense, we need assistance from the mechanisms that run our country to help reinstate knowledge and language transmission. The first thing that I think of is, you know, institutions, organisations providing employees with time, increased cultural leave. If there's a language program that's being run on their country by their mob that they want to go to, give them the leave, give them the time and space to go and do that, because speaking language is our human right. I'm a school teacher, secondary trained, and I was teaching an Aboriginal Adnyamatna language program on my country for the 3 years prior to this, and 90% of the kids in those classrooms were my kin. and my relations. It was the first time that an Arta 12 Adnyamatna language program had been run at that school, and to see those kids come into school being experts of sorts in the content of school was just amazing to be a part of. But because those programs, they need personnel to run them, at some stage we have to say to those school kids, sorry, we can't teach this program anymore because there aren't qualified language teachers out there. So how do we turn the mechanisms to get more of our people in schools teaching as qualified language people rather than going through Western university systems? We used our creation stories to teach the kids. That's our mutta. So we were directly referencing the kids' cultural heritage to teach them about their language. We would teach them in the class, and then we would take them out to the places where those those stories took place, and get them to reenact those stories using the language and those kind of things. It became a real whole community thing. Once we instituted that program, the community almost overnight came into the school, and that's how a language program works in a school. They're not the be-all and end-all. No language program is going to teach our kids to be fluent. It's just we don't have the time to do that, but there's certainly a very important piece in the wheel. And I heard the clapsticks, Tamika, sorry, I just wanted to say this. I just wanted to finish by saying that many of the things that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are talking about here, they're not new. The concepts that we're talking about, bilingual education, they're not new. They've been around for a long time and they work. And places like the Northern Territory, where we still have a chance to do that, those programs need to be funded and they need to be run and supported for longevity.
Thanks so much, Clayton. And some of what you referenced there, where you talked about some of the language programs on country as well, sort of leads to what I wanted to ask you, Joyce, which goes to one of the themes being the connections between language and country. And can you take us through that, please?
Yen Galanko, Minister, thank you. I'm a bachelor woman from Gowrie, Fraser Island, and it's wonderful. I'd just like to thank Annie B for that beautiful welcome. Caring for country is something that our beautiful language students are a part of. They walk country, they breathe country, they listen to country, and part of that journey is listening to country. When you are on country, you have to take time to respect country. And part of that is where elders are present and how we undertake our roles as teachers, as linguists, as grandmothers and mothers, our grandfathers and our fathers before us. That journey is a journey where these Gundus, our children, roam, they look after country through our flora, our fauna, because everything is special. Everything is a part of us. Everything that is thriving on country is where we belong and we connect to. Our language, our culture, our songs, our dance, our stories that are embedded through our mother's womb. And in saying that, the Gundus, when they sing in language, it opens up that beautiful connection, the identity, the thriving of language and listening, where it's orchestrated through our birds on Gowrie or through country of our mainlands, but also that respect through the oceans. Narrowee, Nabangja, Yen Galanko. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Joyce. Denise, how does this play out on the ground in your community over in Western Australia?
Kaya Annalie. Kaya Nyang Jurpanonok Jinaning. Hello, I'm happy to see everyone. And thank you to the Lara people for giving us the opportunity to stand on your land and speak our languages. I look in WA, one of the main projects we're working on right now, which is one of many languages, many projects we do. The one that I really want to focus on today is the incarceration in prisons with our Aboriginal people, with youth, with men and with the women. We've been doing a prison project in a metropolitan city with about 5 prisons we cover, and we have been doing that for the last 3 years, and the statistics that we've got from there are about 500 graduates, and these young men and these young women and the youth are speaking, reading and writing and viewing their language and have a very good understanding. So we also support them when they come out of prisons and they want to focus on still reviving and maintaining their language. They have support groups outside of the prison, like men's groups and women's groups they can go to and still converse in their language and keep the fire burning that they love to do in prison. So that was a massive task that we went to the prison, and we have 3 major stages. We do the LOTE, the Master Apprentice, and we're setting up a diploma of linguistics for long-term prisoners, so they still have a lifeline to engage in their languages. Kaya.
Thank you, Aunty Denise.
Thanks so much, Denise. And to Gillian, we'd be really grateful if you could take us through that 5th theme of truth-telling and celebration, and just take us through how that works in the action plan.
Yo, Nari, Ya Mina Gillian Mundy, Mina Palawa, Miladina Mana Mapali Lutruwita, currently known as Tasmania. Naranina Tuta, the Larrakia people, for welcoming us to your country. Well, I think we need to celebrate the successes, and we've already seen a lot of that already this week, and I expect to see a lot more of that this week. But in many ways, this theme is for the wider community and governments who, through leadership, can set a tone, policy, legislation, resourcing, etc., to value and respect First Nations languages. And some of the things we talked about as a group was having a First Nations Languages Week, the ridiculousness of this continent having just one official language, and place names. Now, we haven't got time to unpack all of them, of course, but dual naming, that's something I'm quite passionate about, and I'm like, why are we still pussyfooting around, reverting to names that were known for so long? It's such an obvious step in truth-telling, in honesty. And, how disrespectful is it that there's still downright insulting colonial place names being clung to? Some are named after violent colonialists or white men who purport to have discovered the area or never even set foot here. It's nonsensical to keep it up and perpetuates lies. And I wonder, why it's clung onto. Is it white fragility? Is it governments paying too much attention to entertainment that is dressed as media, social media trolls? So I think we need to that's something that could really be achievable in this one decade, to put a real rocket into getting those places back to their real names. And I congratulate the work that's already been done, by different governments and also Australia Post and ABC. And I believe it has a snowball effect. Like when I hear people say Nipaluna or Lutruwita, it's a feeling of being respected, pride, acceptance, and knowing that people want truth-telling. And while there's people here that have a lot of research, stats and information on the correlation between health and well-being and speaking language, we know it's good for our health and well-being. And we all know we need to improve the health of our people. And we definitely have lots of stats on that, really dismal ones. So celebrating, valuing and respecting First Nations languages means providing space and opportunity and resourcing. And I think that makes all of so-called Australia richer. So I really hope this action plan will be not only listened to but acted upon, and I think it's a great opportunity to give First Nations people all over Australia confidence in the voice of an of an advisory group being listened to and acted upon. It's, quite timely, I think.
Thanks, Gillian. Lorraine, the next question is for you. This theme also talks about having language in our everyday lives, at home, in schools, and in our workplace. What does this look like for your community?
Thank you, Annalie. I too would like to acknowledge the Larrakia elders that are present here today, and for Auntie B for her beautiful, warm welcome to country. I'd also like to take this moment to pay my appreciation to the other members of the Directions Group who have worked tirelessly on the preparation of the document. For me to respond to your question, Annalie, I'd just like to quickly describe the language situation of the area that I come from. So my family are from the Pilbara in Western Australia. My ancestors lived on the upper plateaus of the Hamersley Ranges and were heavily impacted by the colonisation process as early as the late 1800s. At this point in history, in the history of humanity, there is something like 7,000 Indigenous languages being spoken throughout the world. The United Nations experts are predicting that within the next 75 years, all but 300 of those Indigenous languages will be lost to humanity. Included in that number will be many of the languages that our ancestors have passed on for millennia, from time immemorial. There is some new international research that is beginning to indicate that most of the languages of Australia stopped being transferred as first languages as early as the 1970s. So you can imagine the burden that we carry as Indigenous populations of Australia and the challenges that we face moving forward. My vision is that at the end of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, there will be more than just the 10 of us here celebrating the continuation of our languages for future generations. I hope that our languages are being sung in each and every community in every part of Australia, that our languages are being taught as first languages in schools that are currently teaching migrant languages. I hope that there is stronger protection for Indigenous languages that will serve to increase the resources that are currently allocated. By way of comparison, there are maybe well over 10,000 translators and interpreters working and being employed in organisations and departments across the country, and less than 10, I think, in Western Australia. Those statistics need to change, and like Vicky said, the status quo can't continue. There needs to be immediate and urgent action, and that action needs to take place now. 75 years is not a long time, and the Indigenous communities need to work collectively, collaboratively, and in the spirit of generosity, share and teach their languages.
Thank you, Lorraine. Our last question is for Shania, our youth representative. Shania, how can we support truth-telling, and what does that mean to you?
Warda, everyone. Aritna Nukanam Shania Parola Armstrong. Yenga Alice Springs Rinya. Yenga Kangam Arangararichik. Hello, my name is Shania. I'm from Alice Springs and it's so good to see you all. What does truth-telling mean to me? As a young person, I can see in my old people how much they wish our language was spoken more by our mob. The truth is when colonization happened, it took away our right to speak language, and that's why it's so hard for us. Past policies impacted our languages. Today they are still at risk because everything is in English. That's why we started the Param Language Nest, to immerse our babies and people in language to try and reverse the damage done to our old people, or to our languages, sorry. Australia needs to face the real truths about the true history of this country. Since colonisation, many Indigenous peoples' ancestors were dispossessed and massacred, removed from traditional lands. By removing and committing genocide, languages and cultural practices were lost. We all learn about the First Fleet and the apparent founding of the stolen country. It's about time Australia knew the true history of the original inhabitants of this nation. We have always been here. Our country is rich in culture and language. And how can we support truth-telling? Acknowledging the past and investing in community is the best way to support truth-telling. Australia needs to embrace our languages. The government and everyone can support us by acknowledging the past so that we can move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shania. I love hearing from young people when they're speaking about language. The fire in their belly is just amazing, so thank you. So that brings us to the conclusion of our panel. If anyone would like to talk more about the themes or voices of country, feel free to come and find any one of us throughout the rest of the conference. Thank you all so much for sharing all of your knowledge and your stories and sharing that, especially here today. I will now pass over to the Minister for final reflections.
Thanks so much, Annalee, and thank you for the co-chairing of this section. And thanks to all the members of the Directions Group. You've worked with the government on this process, but the work with the government is a small corner of the passion that you have dedicated your lives to. And I know with that passion and that goodwill, it also carries with it a sense of burden as well, because we all get what's at stake. In doing the Directions work and this report now with Voices of Country, effectively you need to know that burden is shared with the government now, and that's because of the work that you've done. I will say in this forum, I have enjoyed the fact that, unlike almost the rest of my life, I got to be the one asking the questions, but the quality of the answers and the depth of the experience of your own lives and what you draw on reminds us of the responsibility that we can't be the generation that stories and concepts and languages that have a heritage that goes back to the first sunrise on this continent. We can't be the generation where that gets eclipsed. So you've given us all not simply work to do, but a specific direction to be able to achieve the destination that we all share. So can we thank the members of the Directions panel again for all of their work, please? And thanks to all of you and to the organisers and for everything that lies ahead at the Pulama Conference. Thanks very much.
Thank you to all the wonderful speakers there, the Honourable Tony Burke and everyone. It was great. I could just listen to that all day long. You're thinking, damn, you got hair like Lionel Richie. Shouldn't you be saying all night long? All day long. All right. All right, here we go. All right. Now, I hope Tony got his aeroplane, because his plane was about to leave us on the tarmac, waiting for him. And Damigare Sasigare was there as well, okay, to catch the aeroplane. Now, someone has stapled all this together, and that's a job in itself. I have to go back to page 47 of the Corinthians. Okay, sorry. Apologize. Okay, relax, okay. Relax. All right, here we go. All right, I think I found where I am. Yeah, you know what I was doing? I was quickly reading to make sure I had the right person. No, because we have a lot of great speakers there, and just looking at that camera there, angle 4. All right, sorry. Hey, get back into it, sorry. All right, sorry, I apologize. And now for a special guest, known as a passionate spokesperson for language restoration. And he is one of Australia's most unique and, he is the most unique and electrifying First Nations entertainers. Hailed as the new voice of our generation, now an international sensation to the world music scene, his debut album, Gurumali, raced up the music charts within Australia, the UK, the US, Europe, Asia, and New Zealand, Aotearoa, on its release. He has achieved 10 consecutive number ones, minus 11. But anyway, who's really keep? You go, really? You got a song haven't you heard all day long? All right, sorry about that. Apologize, sorry. 10 consecutive number ones on the iTunes worldwide charts. Woo! This guy is super, yeah? He has also been nominated for 2 Golden Guitar Awards for his work on Come Together, alongside Lee Kernaghan and Isaiah Firebrace for Vocal Collaboration of the Year and Heritage Song of the Year. Please welcome to the stage. I want everyone, put your hands together and stomp the stage for Mr. Mitch Tambo, everyone. Woo! Hey, baby. I think we just sit down here on the... Whichever, yeah. Hey, got the baby too. Hello, Baba. All right, too good, yes. Yama? Yeah.
Can I just say, you don't ever have to read that again?
I don't.
No, you don't have to.
No, unless you add another function.
I just want to hear about your new single all day long. That's all I care about.
All day long. Perform tonight, you know. There's big prize money in that. $750. All right, sorry about that. Mitch, we know your work, we love your work, and it's really exciting, and you brought the baby along here too, yeah. And I think everyone want to know, what the baby name?
This is Phoenix, my little girl. Say Yama, Fifi. Say Yama. You wanted to come out here, now you don't want to be here. Hey?
She'll be at like the 30-year one, and then be like, man, I was at the first one, or the 10-year one, Now, we've narrowed it down to one really strong question that I wanted to quickly ask you before you just hit the stage and perform. How has your platform as a well-known performer helped you to champion languages and raise awareness?
I think for me, everything that I do comes back to the young version of myself, like that 15-year-old fella who grew up in the bush, just jumping off the train bridge and swimming in the river, and first got called back to that fire, and being called back and witnessing our corroboree, our traditional style dance. And I remember just that fire being lit in my spirit, and knowing in that moment that's all I want to do for the rest of my life, is just to know and understand who I am and share that with as many people as possible. And I think through that journey, for me, it's just been about celebrating my own identity in the most authentic way I can, and allowing that to encourage all people from all walks of life to just celebrate who you are. Because I think we live in a world where we're constantly pushed to be in a box and, you know, to be westernized and to fit that mold, but we weren't born that way. We were born with our ancestors running in our spirit, and so me just being me, I hope that it just inspires just all people just to embrace their own culture and identity and not lose it, but celebrate it. So, and I think, you know, there's probably a lot of mob here now because there's mob everywhere that thinks I'm a bit of a gimmick. But the truth is I'm still that proud young 15-year-old that has his ancestors inside of his Gi-Dui, his heart and spirit, and can't help but walk this path of celebrating that. And I think, you know, we've got a lot of our mob out there, young mob, that are walking with a limp and folding one trackie up, wanting to be like 50 Cent, but there's nothing more gangster than coming from the oldest living culture on the planet, and that's why I rock. Yeah, thank you. And that's why I rock, you know, my headdress, and I rock these clothes because I'm a proud cultural fellow, but I'm also someone that grew up in a forever changing Western world. So I want to celebrate all of me and put that out there. And, you know, a lot of people think I just chucked a random feather on my head and jumped in front of a camera and made up some language and it's all gammon. But there's stories in this headdress that I carry with me everywhere I go, and it reminds me who I am. And there's stories that have been given to me about Belir, the red-tailed black cockatoo, that he brought us the fire. And for me, wearing this feather is keeping that fire burning, keeping our culture alive, and having the Dinawan feathers up there of the emu, the stories around that Dinawan in the Warrnambool, the Milky Way, and we learned that Dinawan can only walk forward, not backwards. And I know that all I have to do is look in the mirror with this on, and it reminds me, no matter how much slack I get for having fair skin or doing something different, that I have to press on because there's little ones watching, and I want to keep inspiring the next generation to just not forsake who we are, but to keep moving forward and celebrating, because we've got to keep our language alive. We've got to keep our culture prevalent, and it deserves to be here. So yeah, that's what I'm about.
You know, for some of us, you know, we saw you on TV, and then you rewrote the lyrics of a song, and it was a very famous Australian iconic song, Johnny Farnham, The Voice, and you wrote it and remixed and redid it, and in all your language. And I was really taken back with that because, you know, most of our traditional songs, you know, is like a repetitive melody of 4 to 6 words, and where some people may not be able to pick up these songs, and there's only 4 to 6 words, but yet they might be able to sing a whole country song or a whole album of, you know, whatever their singers they listen to and all that, which has maybe, you know, over 1,000 words in it, you know. And I just found that fascination just to learn these 4 to 6 words in a song pattern, but at the same time, you know, having people sort of learning these songs. And you know, we are so honored and delighted to have you, and, you know, for me to introduce you up here and to perform and that. And yeah, Baba, Daddy gonna perform soon. Yes. That is so good. Yes, there you are. Look at you. There you are, yeah?
But you know what, Sean?
Yeah.
When you go back and you talk about that song, You're the Voice, I work really closely with Aunt Bernadette Duncan back home on country in Boggabilla, and I think she's in the crowd, so I think you should give her a big round of applause if she's there, because, yeah, because we've been on this journey together now for many, many years, and, you know, it's all good for me to jump in front of the camera and chuck some sequence on, but I would be nothing without the likes of our elders and all those that have poured into me from back home in Tamworth, but certainly Aunt Bernadette Duncan, yeah.
Yeah.
So to have her in the crowd, it's a bit nerve-wracking because, you know, if I stuff up something, she's going to pull me up, but I do my best.
It is a very strong language in that area. You know, everyone sort of looks at, you know, certain areas of Australia, you know, with the revival of languages and that, and certainly having someone like yourself, you know, electrifying, you know, with this music where you just sing, and you have no apologies about it, where you just sing in that proper language, you know, and the enunciation, the pronunciation of it is really good, and obviously baby learns the language, knows the language, and is singing out to Mom and
give her a clap as she go to Mum. See you, Phoenix. That's my wife Leah too. She's a proud West Papuan woman. Yeah. So Sean.
No, that's good. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, from the West Papuan area.
Yeah.
From West Papuan. Yeah. Well, mine's from the East Papuan. Yeah.
Hey, all day long. That's it.
So I think we're like tumble, you know, like we're family now. All right. Hey, without further ado, I'll just land that word. I want everyone to go crazy. Get your cameras out and just, this guy is amazing. I'm a huge fan, like those fans that you might find in the Bunnings warehouse. Of the superstar himself. And I know he remade the song from famous Aussie singer Johnny Farnham, The Voice. And right now we are going through The Voice.
Don't do it, Sean. Don't do it to me, brother. All right, I'm going to sing now. Sean's going to all day long over there somewhere. Give him a big clap, Mr. Shorty Chulbra. Oh. I don't even want to sing because he just makes you feel gammon, eh? That's why the whole time I'm not looking out there, because I just can't. I don't know if he's serious or not or what. Or anyway, this song's called Heal, this first song. And I wrote this song just before the first lockdowns we went through in Melbourne. And basically what the essence of the story is about calling the old people to bring the rain, to cleanse country and let the river flow again. And on the flip side, it's about us navigating through our own grief and loss and transgenerational trauma as well, if we look at our river being our spirit. And sometimes through life, in the Western way, especially in the city, we can't go through sorry business properly and we move on too quick, and our spirit starts to get blocked up and we start to change and we lose the essence of who we are. And sometimes we've got to go back up the river of our spirit, acknowledge that pain and trauma and do a big ugly cry and let it all go and move through that hurt and pain. But my belief is there's no one without the other. We've got to address our spirit, but we've also got to look after country so we can go back home and wash ourselves clean in that river system and heal. So that's what this song's about. Hope you enjoy it. Please turn it up real loud because Sean's put me on. Gaging ama galabare marmali dau wana bagaban gayalu morame bowale morame yolege galabare bondage jolame bowale morame yolege galabare bondage. Thank you. Thank you. Last but not least, I do want to mention that I did this song well before that political campaign that's on the horizon. And my message then and now is the same, irrespective. And I just believe if only we could all just rise up and be a voice for that real change, that would just come together, all people from all walks of life, and love one another regardless of race, religion, gender, sexuality and class, would create something beautiful, you know. Because as you mob know, we're losing too many of our young people to suicide, incarceration, chronic illness and disease, and we need as many mob as we can to jump on board our wagon to empathise with the true history so that we can truly heal and create change. And that's just what I believe, and you can take it or leave it. But Shawnee wanted to go and mention that campaign, so I'm going to have to say something now. Thank you all for having me. Take care. Big shout out to Auntie Bernadette. I love you and thank you for everything. Take care.
Hey, Miss Tembo, everybody give a big round of applause. How good was that? And his beautiful wife and picking any blame too, yeah? Oh, that was too good. Is it me?
Yes, it is.
That sounds like a movie. Is it me? No, it's you. No, because we're reading the script, because it's in blue and red, and she said, it's you. I said, is it me? She said, yes, it's you. But I'm sure Idris Elba lookalike would do a lot better. Is it me? All right, I better do it. Thank you, Mitch. Yeah, that was too powerful. Your gift, and beauty of indigenous language, like a just celebration of it, you know what I mean? Like just to hear that language and normalizing it, and just hearing it, and and not being unapologetic about it as well, That's what I love about it. Yeah, just the free, language of it. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, the flow. All right.
Thank you, Sean.
No, I think we're bringing in someone.
Yes, we're bringing
That's why
in
I looked
someone.
around. I wasn't like looking at my hair or anything like that. I wasn't like that. Yeah, some of you go, damn them Kales, how they just came back around.
Just looking at the tech crew.
Frizzies.
We're right.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Yeah.
It is now my honor to spend the next few minutes, Sean and I, in conversation with Arundaman William Tillmouth. He is a member of the Stolen Generation and recent winner of the Male Elder of the Year Award at the 2023 National NAIDOC Awards, and founder and chair of Children's Ground. Please make him welcome. Sorry you couldn't join us here, but we're very blessed to have you up on the big screen here with us today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You have been a vocal advocate of the importance of culture and language in everyday life. You have also spoken about the importance of agency and building a foundation through community, culture, and language. Can you start by telling us your story?
Time again in order. True feelings across. At the age by welfare sent to a mission up in Arnhem Land called Croker Island or Mingeland. Really nice place, but it was a Methodist mission for Stolen Generation children, and there are many, many children that had gone through that mission prior to my arrival and even after my arrival. And when I look back on it and I look at the reasons why, forced assimilation was imposed on me was the intent was to take away my Aboriginality, my language, my culture, my family, my community, my country, and my identity. That was the whole thing about it, was to assimilate me in regards to giving me just nothing but education and religion. And I grew up with that, and I got to the stage in my life where I said, I've had enough of this. I don't want to keep assimilating and being just appeasing people just to get by. I have my rights. I can't get this light to work, sorry. But it was a sad state of affairs in regards to the Stolen Generation, and assimilation just left you asking, who am I? Where do I belong? And, how do I find my way back home? Which was my journey. And slowly but surely I made my way back to Alice Springs, because that's where people kept identifying me as being part of. You come from Alice Springs, you come from Alice Springs. Bear in mind, I was only 5 when I was taken away. So I'd literally forgotten all that. I was made to forget all that. We weren't allowed to speak our language. We weren't allowed to even communicate with our families. We never received any communication with our families. And, coming back wasn't easy. It's not easy. It's never easy. In fact, it's fraught with a whole heap of confusion. I've seen families of people who've come back and move in with families to find out later that it wasn't their real family. And the trauma and the heartbreak that goes with that. I was very cautious about not being caught out in that regard. So, yeah, I made my way back home, and as I said at the service just recently for MK Turner, she was the one who identified me for who I was and said, I attended an ARNA course, language course, in an endeavour to learn my language. And when we introduced ourselves, she clearly identified me as, I know who you are. I know where your family is, I know where your country is, I know your community. In fact, you are family. And this is your skin name. And that was a godsend. I knew the direction in order to become who I am. But sadly, I don't have fluency of language. Sadly, that's something that was denied me from the outset. Not about teaching you your own language, but teaching you Western language, Western concepts, learning Western models. And we still today persevere with Western models of thinking and not Aboriginal models of thinking. And that's why Children's Crown stands on its own in regards to that. It's an Aboriginal-owned organisation. It's an Aboriginal-owned movement back towards what historically was ours anyway, and the ancient history and the ancient language that we have stored there. But having said that, sadly, many old people are dying off at an alarming rate, and if we don't act quickly, that language is gone forever. And as I always say, extinction is forever, and we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose that because of our lack of endeavour to learn it, or we don't want to lose it because the influences of social media and technology. So we're making every effort to get back there and build the foundations that these children grow up in. Instead of taking them away, get in and support the families, get in and work with the families and build that foundation based on their traditional lives and their historical ownership of language and country and that. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that's basically my endeavour and why we started Children's Crown.
Thank you. Thank you, William.
So, Uncle William, what is language, or why is language so important to empowering our communities?
Language is vitally important in the essence that to preserve it, firstly to maintain it, firstly to keep it going, but also it also educates others in what we're really trying to say. And if people speak language and you don't understand them, how can you represent them? How can you be a voice? The reality of what we're in today is that first or second language, it's always English. We complicit with the government's agenda in maintaining control for them and for us, for not us, but the people who who have vested interests, conflicts of interest as well. But the impact in life, you're just a docile body that of time. And sadly, that's what a lot of the stolen generation was, is people who just drifted and had to fit wherever they could because their whole identity had been wiped away. Language is important in finding out who you are and where you come from and where you belong.
Okay, thank you, Uncle William. Thank you for your strength and your support to our communities and youth seeking their empowerment and the role of language has to play in that. Give a big warm thank you to Uncle William.
Thank you. Thank you, Uncle William. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, you know, I did my best to try and finish this conference now-ish. We've kind of finished now-ish, but we also have dinner tonight. We have a big dinner tonight that will kick off at around
6 o'clock?
Something like that.
Be here
Just
5
come along if you're hungry. Just come along when you
Make up
feel hungry, you know what I mean?
Black fella
Come along.
time.
There's going to be everything there. And basically, you can sign up still. AGL, Australia's Got Language. I wasn't joking about it. There is prize money for it. $1,250 for the winner. Second prize is $950. Third prize is $750. This is pretty good money, yeah? And you go home and you know because you've been away for all this week and you go home with that kind of money in your pocket, yeah? And it's going to be good. You're going to be very popular, yeah? You'll be captain, yes.
And while we're on the subject of money, Sean, I was told that if you go down to the registry office down there, the Rego office, and you sign up, put your email and phone number, all your contact details, you go into a draw to win $400 for a dinner for two. I thought, $400? That's a lot of KK there. Have to bring, so invite the family. I don't know about a dinner for two, but maybe dinner for 10.
That's it. $400.
So, wow, that's a big money, that one. So everybody, please make your way. If you're going past the Rego office or anything, stop in. All they need is your name, your contact details, and $400 could be yours.
You can register your car there too while you're at it, okay?
Might get a new car for $400.
That, my friend did buy. He bought a car for $400 in Adelaide. And then he had to go to Port Augusta and work for the day, and as he drove back, it was nighttime, just gone on nighttime, and he turned that light on, it didn't work. So he looked in the glove box and what did he find?
Were the tires on?
No gloves in there, but a torch. He was driving down that highway with the Sturt, is it Sturt Highway? Driving at night with a torch out the window, driving.
Yeah.
And I believe, Lita, he's your cousin. And I said, why didn't you stop? He said, I don't know what kind of hairy man out there.
Wow.
And I said, that's true. That is true.
Yep.
We don't know. We have no idea what kind of hairy man out there, yeah? Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I think we know who the next group is. It is my pleasure to invite this beautiful and colorful and the Narukuru Wala sisters, singers here, all the way from the wonderful and the beautiful islands off the coastline here as the Tiwi Islands.
We here today, we are strong women, and we are Narukuru Wala group. Thank you.
The first song this lady's gonna sing is Holy Spirit song.
Yeah.
Next song is about men going out hunting in a long time ago. Yeah, hunting for turtles and dugongs and fish.